The film begins at the North Pole, where humans are doing serious harm to the environment. We see two polar bears, a mother, and her son. Together, they stumble upon an abandoned camp filled with all sorts of trash. There, they find two stuffed toys that are also polar bears. The polar bear cub starts playing with the toys as the mother explores the surroundings further. She notices several flags lined up in a straight direction. The polar bear has no idea that she is looking at a row of dynamites. Out in the distance, a person detonates the dynamites. During the chain of explosions, the mother polar bear rushes to her son's location. She swats away the dynamite that he's holding. They get thrown off by the explosion. The surrounding ice caps begin to collapse, so they attempt to flee. However, the polar bears go back to pick up the stuffed toy that fell. Because of that, a large block of ice falls on the polar bears, trapping them. The situation gets worse when a pile of dynamite lands near them. The mother makes a hard decision. She throws her son as far away as she can to save him from the explosion. The polar bear cub tries to look at what remains of the explosion. His mother is nowhere to be found. Later that night, a little girl named Jessica finds the cub sleeping in the snow. She takes him with her and names him Backham. Fast forward to when Backham is already an adult bear. We see him sleeping in his enclosure in a zoo. A naughty kid tries to get his attention by throwing trash at him. Not wanting to get harassed further, the polar bear retaliates. While the crowd is distracted, Backham bounces a soda can back at the kid, knocking him out. After that, he goes back to his room and continues with his daily routine. At one point, Backham's teddy bear falls off the table. When he picks it up, he is overcome with sadness and grief. The moment is only interrupted after his alarm clock startles him. Backham then takes a route inside the building that leads him to a vending machine. He looks around to see if anyone is looking, then inserts a special coin to activate the machine's true form. The device scans him, but fails to recognize him. However, it works properly after the bear kicks it. The machine slides to the side and reveals a hidden elevator. Backham heads down, and we see him entering a base full of secret agents. Most of the agents there greet him, and some slap his butt. When he tries to slap another agent's butt as well, he accidentally picks Jessica. She gets mad at him, so he runs as fast as he can to where he is supposed to go. Next, we see Backham put on his janitorial uniform. He then performs his duties, cleaning the hallway. At one point, he sees an agent training, and he tries to copy the agent's moves. Then, out of nowhere, Jessica appears and slaps Backham's butt. She playfully wrestles with him. Suddenly, another agent appears and informs Backham that the West Corridor is a mess. The scene shifts to the West Corridor, and we see a high-ranking official holding his stomach while bumping into everything in front of him. He has an upset stomach, and he wants to get to the bathroom as fast as possible. Backham chases after the man until they reach the front of the restroom. The polar bear tackles him, and because of that, the man can't help but release a volatile fart. Backham realizes what's happening and releases the man. One of the agents scolds him for making a mess. Backham immediately goes back to his cleaning duty. While sweeping, he sees a pen and throws it into the bin. He misses, and the pen bounces towards a nearby bathroom stall and explodes. Backham rushes inside and sees the man from before with his hair on fire. The bear tries to put out the flames by smacking the man's head, but this ends up infuriating the high-ranking official. Later that night, we see Backham sulking in his room. Jessica visits him and tries to cheer him up with some snacks. We then find out that the man from earlier that day is Jessica's father. While comforting him, Jessica notices that Backham is looking at his teddy bear. After seeing that, she can't help but cry and give him a hug. The next day, a giant spiked metal ball lands on the White House. Two guns emerge from this ball, and they fire millions of smaller metal balls into the air. The entire city becomes covered with them. After a garbage truck bumps into one of them, it explodes. Soon multiple explosions happen within the city. Several helicopters fly over the unidentified object in the White House. However, all of them get shot down. The president of the Global Alliance and his secretaries watch from their convening area as the disaster unfolds. The president receives a call informing him that their system has been hacked. The call cuts off and is replaced by an ominous voice. The voice demands that they hand over all their diamonds, otherwise, the city will be blown to bits. The president sees no other way, so he complies. We then see polar bears in special suits entering a bank vault and taking all the diamonds there. As the polar bears retreat back to their escape vehicle, we get a glimpse of a secret agent watching from a vantage point. Meanwhile, the Secretary of Defense tries to convince the president to wage war on the invaders. Another secretary chimes in and suggests refraining from warfare. He points out that they had already sent their best agent to infiltrate the enemy ship. In the next scene, we see the agent come out of a vent and land on the corridor of the enemy ship. He quickly discovers that the temperature is freezing, so he turns on the heater in his suit. When two polar bears approach, he uses a gadget to make him invisible. While sneaking around inside the ship, the agent sees his reflection in a nearby mirror. His vanity gets the best of him, as he becomes distracted for a few seconds. He doesn't realize that the mirror is actually a human detector. The alarms go off, and he is immediately surrounded by enemies. Back at the president's headquarters, they receive a video of a power plant being blown up. The leader of the polar bears also appears on the screen wearing a spiked mask. The president accuses the polar bears of breaking their promise. So the leader responds by showing them the agent that they have captured. The president tries to play dumb, and he suggests that there has been a misunderstanding. Meanwhile, the captured agent tries to deliver a coded message with his facial expression. One of the polar bears sees what he's doing and hits him with a beam that freezes his entire body. Then the leader warns the president to not attempt tricks anymore or else they will eliminate the humans. After the video call ends, one of the secretaries pulls up the video and interprets the coded message from the agent. They find out that all of their enemies are polar bears and that the enemy ships are not safe for humans. After that, the Secretary of Defense grabs the attention of the president and tells him about a plan. In the next scene, we see Backham inside an interrogation room. Watching from a different room are the president and two secretaries. The Secretary of Defense tells the president that he has a super brain chip that he can implant on Backham. The chip will turn the polar bear into a skilled agent like James Bond. However, he also reveals that it has side effects. The other secretary voices his disagreement, stating that he will not allow Backham to come to harm. Unfortunately, the president has already made up his mind. He tells the other secretary to follow the defense secretary's directive. After the conversation, we see Backham getting shot with a tranquilizer. Backham wakes up in a room while wearing a special suit. He hears Jessica talking to him using a communicator in his ear. She tells him that he is now Agent 008 and begins and that his first round of training has already begun. After Jessica presses a button, the room that Backham is in suddenly gets lifted up, which reveals a bigger training arena. He then sees several secret agents around him. They attack him at the same time, and he gets thrown into the side of the arena. When the agents charge at Backham again, Jessica flips a switch that turns on the super chip in the bear's brain. All of a sudden, Backham becomes adept at fighting, and he takes down the agents attacking him. After the fight, Jessica takes him to a different area to help him choose his gadgets. While explaining the purpose of a gadget, Jessica notices that Backham becomes completely paralyzed. She tells him that it's the side effect of the super chip. Jessica then activates a mechanical bee that stings Backham's behind, curing his paralysis. She tells him that the bee is essential to help him in emergencies and that it is also capable of self-defense. In the following scenes, we witness Backham's training montage as a new agent. We see him training how to shoot, assemble guns, hack into systems, and more. In one of his training missions, he is instructed to rescue a target from a castle. The target is his favorite stuffed toy. We see him masterfully dodging laser traps while getting to the location of the target. Unfortunately, when he touches the toy, he triggers a trap. A missile flies toward him, but he manages to shield himself from the explosion. He fails the mission after he hears a beeping sound from one of the traps. Remembering his past trauma, he runs away to hide, abandoning the toy. Jessica arrives at the scene to try and comfort the anxious Backham. Later that day, Jessica visits the Secretary of Defense and tries to convince him to cancel the mission. She argues that Backham had failed the last training and that the side effect of the super chip might cause problems. The secretary refuses to listen. She tells her that the mission will commence as scheduled. The day of the mission finally arrives. We see Backham inside a jet, gorging on some junk food. He finds the gadget hidden in his nose. Then, he remembers the instructions given to him by Jessica's father. Out of curiosity, Backham licks the gadget, and it causes him to fart a toxic gas cloud. He almost falls unconscious. Fortunately, Jessica arrives to ventilate the area. She tells him that he's there because she knows that Backham is still depending on her for a lot of things. Suddenly, the two hear a warning on the jet's control panel. Several enemy planes are closing in on them. Jessica takes control of the jet. Backham, on the other hand, fails to get to the co-pilot seat in time. The enemies launch missiles that Jessica evades. She then shoots the missiles down with the jet's built-in machine guns. The agents are shocked and they see the enemy plane hover above them and grip their jet using mechanical arms. Jessica presses a button that splits the jet into smaller pieces, allowing them to escape. Unfortunately, another enemy appears in front of them and fires another missile at what remains of the jet. Luckily, Jessica and Backham manage to eject just in time. Next, we see Backham and Jessica hanging on for dear life at the side of the enemy plane. Eventually, the plane returns to the enemy territory, a remote island. This is how Jessica and Backham succeed in getting inside the enemy base. In the next scene, we see the leader of the polar bears ask about the diamonds they collected. We then see a complex machine that uses diamonds for some yet-to-be-revealed reason. Back to the agent's perspective, we see them scan the landing area for a way to get deeper into the base. They almost get caught after Backham does something silly, but they manage to hide in time. The agents sneak around and find a better hiding spot. Jessica discovers that she has no signal on her console. Backham discovers an entrance through a ventilation shaft. Jessica tells him that she cannot go with him since the base is hostile to humans. Still, she promises to communicate with him from afar throughout the mission. Backham proceeds to traverse the vent with the mechanical bee as his guide. Jessica uses her console to watch what's happening from the bee's point of view. Backham falls down into a large metal fan, but he manages to land on a frame instead of the blades. He gets deeper into the main base and haphazardly avoids being seen by the guards. He stops for a while to fix his appearance in front of a mirror. However, 2 guards spot him because of that. He tries to distract them and knock them out, but he fails. The mechanical bee ends up helping him out, electrocuting both guards. Backham steals one of the guards' uniforms and goes deeper into the enemy base. Backham becomes awestruck by the appearance of the main base, which resembles the North Pole. He tries to blend in by joining a line of marching soldiers. After that, he changes direction and investigates a room containing the complex contraption in which the diamonds are being used. Backham releases the mechanical bee to give Jessica a good view of what is happening inside. She then tells him to spy on the control room. Once he gets there, he sees that the contraption is at 33% completion. Backham gets distracted by a commotion on the other side of the room. He sees a female polar bear getting harassed by a high-ranking soldier with an eye patch. She rejects his confession of love, but he doesn't give up. Meanwhile, on the other side of the base, the 2 guards that Backham defeated earlier get discovered by other guards. The entire base's alarm system goes off, informing everyone that an intruder is inside. The enemies mobilize their forces to find Backham. Backham tries to act inconspicuously, but he bumps into the female polar bear from before. She almost falls off, but he grabs her. When he tries pulling her up, Backham becomes paralyzed, and they end up falling together. Fortunately, they bounce off some wires on the way down, returning them back to the platform. However, since Backham is paralyzed, he is still clinging to her in a compromising pose. The eye-patch polar bear sees what's happening and becomes enraged. He thinks that Backham is trying to steal his crush from him. The mechanical bee arrives and breaks Backham out of his paralysis. He runs away, but he doesn't notice that the girl's pink bow tie is on his head. Suddenly, Backham finds himself surrounded by the eye-patch polar bear's lackeys. Back at the landing zone, Jessica is discovered by a robot. The leader sees the security footage and orders the soldiers to capture her. We see Backham getting choked by the eye-patch bear when another group of enemies arrive and point out that he is the intruder. Jessica gets into a heated battle with the soldiers, but she gets knocked out by a soldier inside a large suit of armor. Next, we see Backham hiding inside a bathroom stall. The eye-patch bear almost finds him. However, when he opens one of the stalls, he sees the female polar bear using it. She screams, which causes the eye-patch bear to leave the bathroom. In the next scene, we see Jessica being subjected to a torture device that reads her memories. The leader of the polar bears finds out about Jessica and Backham's past. Back in the bathroom, Backham receives a call from Jessica telling him her location. What he doesn't know is that the one calling him is the leader of the polar bears, pretending to be Jessica. Backham rushes to where he was instructed to go. However, on his way there, he becomes paralyzed and encounters a large imposing mechanical enemy. The bee saves him just in time, and he manages to run away. The giant enemy relentlessly chases him until he finds a small opening to squeeze through. The enemy ends up crashing into a wall and falling out of the building. Backham finally arrives at the designated location. He hears Jessica's voice calling for him. However, several soldiers suddenly appear and point a gun at him. He distracts the soldiers and uses a spray to take down most of them. However, despite outsmarting a few, more guards are still pointing a gun at him. Backham then sees the leader of the polar bears standing on higher ground, holding Jessica hostage. The soldiers start firing at Backham. He moves away from the gunfire and sends a small but powerful bomb toward his enemy, causing an explosion. The room becomes shrouded in smoke, so Backham uses that as an opportunity to grab Jessica. Unfortunately, he gets intercepted by a giant mecha piloted by the eye-patch bear. Backham gets knocked down by a punch from the mecha. Then the mecha tries to stomp him, but the leader orders the mecha to stop, stating that they don't eliminate fellow polar bears. Jessica wakes up and tries to shoot down the mecha. The mecha tries to launch a missile at Jessica, but the bee intervenes, causing the mecha to miss. The mecha tries to launch another missile, this time at Backham. Upon hearing the beeping sound of the missile head, Backham freezes. In the next scene, we see the leader of the polar bears makes a call to the Global Alliance. The president and the secretary find out that Jessica and Backham failed their mission. Then, the leader threatens to blow up the bomb. The president tries to plead and apologize for what happened to the North Pole, but the leader is not in the mood for negotiations. While the leader and the president are arguing, we see Backham trying to get a gadget from his nose. The polar bear guarding him stomps on him, causing the gadget to fly into the mouth of another polar bear. The gadget activates, and a nauseous gas is expelled inside the room. Backham manages to steal the scepter, which is also the bomb remote, but he gets immediately caught. The leader presses a button that clears the gas from the room. Backham tries to press the off switch on the scepter, but he becomes paralyzed before he can do so. Fortunately, Backham manages to use his tongue to press the off button, disarming all of the bombs in the city. Jessica kicks a sharp object toward Backham's butt, snapping him out of the paralysis. They then try to fight off the rest of the soldiers and escape. While the agents are making their escape, we see the president of the Global Alliance unleash his rage. He promises to make the bears pay for their crimes. The leader laughs at the threat, and the call ends. Sensing that the polar bears still have another plan against the humans, the president decides for a more aggressive move. He instructs the aircraft carrier corps to launch an attack on the polar bears' base. Then we see a large fleet of aircraft carriers just outside of the polar bears' base. In the next scene, we see Jessica and Backham trying to escape from the base. However, the eye patch bear shoots a precise shot that makes Backham fall off the escape vehicle. Only Jessica manages to get out of the base. We then get a glimpse of Backham's dream. In the dream, he sees her with a scarred face. When he tries to hug her in the dream, he wakes up. Backham looks around and sees the leader of the polar bears, without the mask, standing by the window. When he approaches the leader, she turns around and reveals herself to be Backham's mother all along. Backham can't believe his eyes. He sees his mother holding his stuffed polar bear, and she brings out another smaller one, making the pair of toys complete. Backham is overcome with emotions, and he rushes to hug his long-lost mother. Jessica calls the president and informs him that she escaped. However, she also urges the defense secretary to help save Backham, who is still on the base. The secretary refuses, saying that there is no time for that. Jessica's father argues with the Secretary of Defense. Unfortunately, the president agrees that there is no time to save Backham. After failing to persuade the president, Jessica decides to go back to the base on her own. Back at the polar bear base, we see Backham's mother don the spiked helmet once more. A flashback scene starts as she tells him what happened after they got separated. We find out that Backham's mother was found by humans. She was used for several experiments that caused her pain. When they no longer had use for her, they threw her to pass away in a pit. A bolt of lightning struck the pit and gave Backham's mother the power to communicate with humans. She used this power to rally other polar bears to her cause and seek revenge on the humans. Back to the present, the leader tells Backham about her plan. She explains that the giant contraption is going to be used to freeze the planet and turn it into a haven for polar bears. At the same time, wiping out the human race in the process. She urges Backham to fight by her side. Backham is unsure how to respond. Nearby we see the eye patch bear listening to the conversation. He becomes livid and consumed with jealousy. Next, we see him in a different area. We see the mecha suit being upgraded. The eye patch bear looks at his lackeys as if planning something nefarious. Jessica arrives at the base and breaks through the landing area. She bursts inside the main control room and sees Backham standing behind her. She tells him to come with her and escape, but he doesn't cooperate. Then we see Jessica getting electrocuted and captured by the polar bears. The leader appears and expresses her surprise that Jessica risked her life for Backham. Jessica tries to reason with Backham, but the leader cuts her off and argues with her. The argument is interrupted by a giant mecha crashing into the room. The mecha knocks out most of the polar bears in the room. It also tries to stomp Backham, but the leader uses her power to electrocute the mecha. The mecha then launches missiles that knock back the leader. The mecha then punches the leader, causing her to hit the wall, and her helmet falls off. The eye patch bear's lackeys arrive at the room and point a gun at everybody, completing a successful takeover. The eye patch bear wears the helmet and announces that he is now the leader of the base. Jessica tries to warn him about the impending attack, but he tosses her to the side. The eye patch bear tells everyone that he is not afraid of human attackers. The president calls the base and tries to negotiate. However, the new leader doesn't respond and ends the call instead. The president decides to forego negotiations and just launch the attack. We see several aircraft and naval warships attack the base. However, the assault fails after the eye patch bear activates the freezing contraption. Hundreds of fighter jets fall to the ground, and the naval warships are rendered useless. The planet is also slowly engulfed in ice. Jessica tries to talk some sense to the eye patch bear. However, his response is shooting her with a freeze ray, turning her to ice. A surge of pure anger overcomes Backham after seeing what happened to his best friend. He engages the eye patch bear in combat and overpowers him. The rest of the lackeys attack him, but they all get bested. When Backham tries to turn off the freezing contraption, the mecha fires a missile at him, sending him flying out the window. Backham runs toward the direction contraption itself and jumps down to its location. He bounces on several wires and then comes face to face with the energy core of the contraption. Backham sees the wires that he needs to unplug and jumps in its direction. However, the mecha, with an eye patch bear in it, comes out of nowhere to intercept him. The mecha tosses Backham around on a nearby platform. Then the mecha attempts to fire a missile at him. Backham digs deep within his mind to overcome his fear of explosives. He suddenly laughs maniacally at the situation. The eye patch bear sends the missile flying. When it comes in contact with Backham, he uses his body to deflect the missile and send it toward the contraption instead. The contraption explodes, and the freezing process of the planet is put to a stop. In the next scene, we see Jessica's father report to the president that the agents have succeeded with the mission. The defense secretary and all the other secretaries in the room urge the president to launch a nuclear missile at the bears. Jessica's father argues against it. By some miracle, the president listens to Jessica's father for the first time. However, the defense secretary pushes the president aside and launches the missile himself. Back at the base of the polar bears, they are alerted of an approaching nuclear missile. Backham's mother takes it upon herself to stop it. She rides a jet and intercepts the missile. Using the jet, she redirects the missile upwards. However, she has to stay with it so it doesn't change direction. Backham decides that he doesn't want to lose his mother again, so he rides the mecha and flies to her location. He joins her at the last second, just before the missile explodes. The two polar bears sacrifice themselves to save everyone in the base. In the aftermath of the incident, we see Jessica recover from her frozen state. After that, she goes to the North Pole to see if Backham and his mother survived. She finds the crash site of the mecha that Backham used. She also discovers paw prints and 2 stuffed toys. Jessica doesn't pursue them further. She is satisfied knowing that the two polar bears might be alive and living a peaceful life somewhere.